I'm grateful to be able to follow the honourable member for Inverclyde, and I do respect the passion and the conviction that he brings to his argument. I do fundamentally disagree with him. I thought the debate was opened really superbly by the Secretary of State, and I thought his predecessor, the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Sevenoaks, gave also an outstanding speech, as has someone I think we can rightly call appropriately in the Chamber, President Moon, the honourable member for Bridgend. But I do rise to speak in this debate because it presents a matter of principle for me and for many of my colleagues. And I should say at the very outset, we've heard a lot of things from the SNP benches during the hours of this debate, but I assure the House they do not speak for Scotland. Hear, hear. The SNP are not Scotland, and they do not speak for the majority of Scots. It is the first and most important duty of the state to ensure the safety and security of our country, and it is my firm belief and contention that the continuous at sea deterrent is essential to this purpose. There is indeed a clear moral case for this deterrent, and I thought that the honourable gentleman, the member for New Forest East, gave a superb speech outlining that, and I certainly don't intend to go over any of that ground. I thought his speech was exemplary in making that case. But it is our responsibility as parliamentarians to ensure that we are safe as a country, and not only that the peace is preserved, but the cause of peace is promoted in the world. And peace is preserved through strength. That is the lesson of history. It is threatened by weakness.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way, and he's absolutely right. The fact of the matter is, possession of nuclear weapons by the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and by other countries through NATO and the Western world is the peacemaker, because that's the deciding factor for other countries not to attack. So nuclear power gives peace, and that has been lost in this debate by some people in this chamber.
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that intervention, because history does show that when there is a balance of threat in the world, then there is a very real deterrent that prevents aggression. Yes, I will give way.
He talks about history and peace. Can I just remind him that during the Cold War, 25% of the UN's peacekeeping force came from the 4 Nordic countries. What's wrong with a defence posture similar to them?
I think, as I'm going to come on to in my speech, I think that we are indeed peacekeepers and peacemakers because of our commitment to freedom and the defence of freedom. And we are protected and ensured against aggression by our collective will and our collective commitment to stay strong. And that also means that we have to be prepared to commit resources to that end. And while we undoubtedly have the best armed forces in the world, and we're rightly proud of them, and as I've heard the Secretary of State say on a number of occasions, they represent the best of us and the best of our union, and we're rightly proud of their operational capabilities and their reach, I do worry that they're simply not big enough for everything we ask of them. And I would remind the House, which I know needs little or no reminder of this, but behind our men and women in the Queen's uniform, there are families. Yeah, yeah. Now, Scotland's national motto is, and I hope that you'll forgive me my schoolboy Latin, is Nemo me impune lacessit. Which, Madam Deputy Speaker, very appropriately for this debate means no one provokes me with impunity. And in Scots we might say, wha dare meddle with me? Now our strength is not only our defence, but is also a defence to our friends and allies in NATO. And there I thought the honourable member for Bridgend spoke so well about the importance of the combined strengths of the members of NATO. The UK is not a warmonger. We take our obligations on nuclear non-proliferation seriously and remain as a country committed to the long-term goal of a world without nuclear weapons. And I thought that the contribution from another one of my friends on the other side of the House, the member for Gedling, was an outstanding contribution in respect to that issue. But the nuclear arsenal is a vital part of Western defence under the NATO umbrella. We enjoy a hard-won peace, one where there has been no recent major state-on-state conflict, And that is principally because of the strength of the resolve of the members of NATO, a resolve that I am proud we contribute to. Aggressors need to know that they face consequences, and our love of peace should not be misinterpreted by anyone. We are resolved to protect it by being strong in terms of the deployment of soft power in diplomacy, and strong in terms of our deployment of hard power in terms of our armed forces. Our security, Madam Deputy Speaker, is put at risk from those who simply would dismantle these capabilities. We don't and we shouldn't glory in weapon systems. This country rightly does not parade its missiles, as some countries do. But we should also not be ashamed of our nuclear stance. And people like the Leader of the Opposition, who have always, from a position of principle, opposed nuclear weapons, would put our country at risk if he ever sat in 10 Downing Street. Because anyone aspiring to the greatest office in government in this country should be prepared to put our national security front and centre. And the character of one who aspires to that job must be one which accepts the important place of our defensive formation of the nuclear deterrent. Now, the SNP position on this is clearer than Labour's, and it derives from their position on independence. Now, what honourable members need to understand is the SNP, for the last few years, have been busy trying to build a wide coalition of support in Scotland to break up the United Kingdom. And they do that by pivoting and contorting and doing whatever they have to do in order to mop up as much support as they can. It's not so long ago that the SNP were not just not in favour of NATO, but they were anti-NATO. And it was Alex Salmond persuading his followers that they needed to be more realistic about the mood of the most conservative nation in these British Isles, namely the Scots, that they would never wear the idea of us walking away from our obligations and responsibilities as free people to other free people in the world. He persuaded them that they needed to embrace the idea of NATO. And they have this half-hearted position while saying that they will be on NATO on certain conditions, and those conditions would make them unsuitable and inappropriate to be members of NATO. Now, there are many principal proponents of disarmament, and in the SNP, yes, I will, since I've mentioned. But
is it his policy that if Scotland voted or votes in future for independence, that it shouldn't be a member of NATO?
I will do everything in my power to make sure that Scotland remains part of the United Kingdom. And it will be with my last breath that I make the argument for my country remaining part of the most successful union in hundreds of years. Now, I recognise that I am running out of time, and so I will use the time left simply to say this. I have great respect for those who serve in our armed forces. I've met many submariners and former submariners, and I cannot help but be impressed by their courage and resolve. The life that these people have chosen to lead in the defence of our country at sea is one of sacrifice and commitment. And they are at sea for many months, separated from family and friends, and in cramped and, I would say, claustrophobic conditions. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt in my mind about the need for a nuclear deterrent continuously at sea. The world has changed and will continue to change, but the insurance policy of our nuclear submarine fleet and the missiles and weapons they carry is still an essential part of our national defence. We enjoy peace, a hard-won peace, but it is a watchful peace that requires eternal vigilance of our submariners and our armed forces and security forces and the support of our nation's Parliament. They deserve our support.
Kerr Monahan.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and if I could start by declaring my interest. My husband served on Trident submarines for most of his 17